worst parts about having a period isn't even the actual period itself, it's all of the mood symptoms that follow it. The mood symptoms like the mood swings. You feel good one moment and then the next moment you're like a raging bitch, or you just feel really angry, or, let's not forget the constant anxiety that some of us feel right before our cycle starts. It is so tiring, it is exhausting, and it impacts our relationships in such a significant way. And the worst part is that we can just feel so powerless over it. It's like you do your best to implement the strategies that like journaling and meditating, and maybe you're still working out and you reach out to friends, but that nagging, anxious feeling or that nagging, like low mood just doesn't go away until your period's actually started and the blood is flowing. It is such a distressing time for so many of us. If you're new to this channel, my name is Dr. Bisleen Atlee. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapy certified naturopathic doctor, and I teach women how to heal their brain so that they can elevate their self-worth and build the life of their dreams. One of the things that really prevents us sometimes for stepping into our peak potential consistently is just how our hormones change over our cycle. And in this video, I'm not specifically going to dive deep into what's happening in every part of your cycle. If that's something that you're interested in, comment below, let me know. That is definitely a video that I can make. But more so this video, I want to focus on how can you really support your brain health before your period starts. Because for a lot of us, and if you relate to that, it is such a distressing time. And we end up spending an entire week or 2 weeks of the whole month either just being in this state of leading up to our period or then being in our period. And it's so important that we learn how do we really manage and support a happy, healthy brain during this time so that our menstrual cycle doesn't have to take away from the joys that we're supposed to experience from our life. And for a lot of us women, it does. And this is because no one's taught us this. No one has ever sat down to teach us what is happening in our menstrual cycle, what is happening in our brain during specific parts of our cycle, and how do we really support ourselves during this time. And because of this lack of education, the other piece that also contributes to this as well is that we just normalize PMS symptoms, that's premenstrual symptoms, and it's oftentimes normalized, I think, in my opinion, a bit too much. It seems like it's almost really rare to find a woman who doesn't experience these premenstrual symptoms. But the truth is that we actually shouldn't be experiencing a lot of these premenstrual symptoms. But because of our lifestyles, the amount of stress that we're under, the types of foods that we eat, these premenstrual symptoms are more common than not. And the good thing though here is that there is so much that you can do, especially that week leading up to your cycle, to support your brain. And that's what this video is about. I want to give you tools, and I'll teach you specifically what's happening around this time of the cycle so that you can support yourself better. And with, gentle things in your lifestyle that you do, they can make such a big difference in terms of how you show up during that week of your cycle and also when your cycle starts. Because I am so big on telling women that, it's important that you be aware, because when you go online, you'll see all these influencers talking about cycle syncing and your workouts and all of that stuff. And I think it's so important to be aware of where you are in your cycle so that you can set these realistic expectations of yourself. But I also think it's so important that we don't use our cycle and where we are in our cycle as an excuse to not get stuff done. You can still get stuff done. You just need to change your expectations and change the focus and how you're supporting your body so that you can still do everything that you need to do. Because let's be honest, for a lot of us, it's hard to take off an entire week just because you're on your period, and then another week afterwards. Right? It's really hard for us to take off all that time, and this really disrupts the flow in terms of the things that we are building and creating in our life. So when we can understand how our brain functions and works and be aware of it, we can still do everything that we want to do. We just have to tweak ourselves a little bit as a result of it. So that's a really big thing that I want to emphasize here, is that I am kind of about cycle syncing, but I don't think that we should hone down on it so much, because then it just sets the expectation that, oh, it's 5 days before my cycle. Well, guess, I'm not going to be as great this week, and then, just again, it disrupts that flow that you're building. And I don't know about you, girl, but I want to build something massive and great. And I can't have my cycle disrupting my flow for 2 weeks out of an entire month. Like, no way. I can't accomplish big goals like that. But when we can understand how our brain functions and works, we can become aware of it and support our bodies in that way. And that's what this is about. It's not about limiting what you can do during these times. It's about supporting yourself in the right way so that you can go out and do whatever it is that you want to do. That's what this is all about, and that's what this education piece is about. In order for you to support your brain health before your cycle, it's important for you to have a bit of an understanding of what's happening in your cycle during this time. As I mentioned before earlier, this isn't a video where I'm going to really dive deep and explain to you what's happening in every part of the cycle. I really want to make the focus be on what's happening, especially in your body the week before your period begins, and how you support yourself during that time. When we look at your menstrual cycle as a whole, there's 2 main phases. You have the follicular phase. So this is when in your ovaries, a follicle is maturing into an egg. And then you have the luteal phase, and this is when the egg is essentially being released for fertilization. 3 main hormones are dominant in your cycle that we're going to focus on, which is estrogen, right? Estrogen is the most dominant in that follicular phase. You have testosterone, which starts to become dominant during that ovulation phase, right? So this is when you are most fertile, your body's like, put a baby in me, and usually we're generally feeling our best. And then in that luteal phase, when that egg is being released for fertilization, that is when we have the luteal phase, and this is when your hormone progesterone is the most dominant. So this luteal phase is the phase that happens kind of right before your period starts. And this phase, depending on your cycle, what it looks like, it can be 10 days, 7 days, right? So it ranges, and it's important for you, I always say, to track your cycle just to see where you are on it. And most importantly, well, at least what I specifically track in my life, I like to keep things honestly as simple as possible. That is how I thrive. And so when it comes to tracking my cycle, I'm just really looking at when this luteal phase for me specifically starts, so that I can start adjusting my lifestyle strategies and supporting my brain health in a really powerful way, so that I can still show up as my best self during this time. When it comes to this part of the cycle, what happens to a lot of us is that, and not what just happens, this is how we're living. We just live really high stress lives, super high stress lives. We're constantly on the go. Our schedules are just jam-packed together with things to do. There's no room to breathe. Like, no wonder we're all just so anxious and stressed out. Now, what ends up happening is that if we end up being really stressed out during this part of the cycle, our body actually doesn't end up producing as much progesterone that it needs to in order for you to feel good. Progesterone, it's also called nature's Valium, right? It's like a very calming, very relaxing hormone. But what happens is that, and this is what I want to show you here, is I have a diagram. So this diagram here, as you can see, okay, is your steroid hormone pathway. Now, you're like, why the heck are there smiley faces in my steroid hormone pathway? And this is because I really wanted to keep it super, super simple for you. This is not supposed to be like, a biology one-on-one lesson in like first year university. This is supposed to be a lesson to help you use strategies to improve your brain health. You don't have to be a scientist for this stuff. And so the pieces that I want you to focus, so your steroid hormone pathways, it's very complicated. I didn't even draw the whole thing. And I wrote smiley faces where there's other hormones here, but I don't want that to be your focus. There's essentially 3 places that I want you to look at. So number 1, cholesterol forms the basis of all your hormones in your body. Okay, so that's why cholesterol is at the top. It goes and helps and supports all these other hormones. Now, what happens up here, right, is that we have progesterone right here. So cholesterol can go and make progesterone. Then we have our stress hormone, cortisol. That's the other name for your stress hormone. It's cortisol is down here. Now, what happens, as you can see, right, this progesterone, this is supposed to be the dominant hormone in that luteal phase of your cycle. So this is before the days leading up to your period, progesterone. If we're really stressed out, your body's going to want to prioritize cortisol to be made, right? Because cortisol is protective and it serves its own functions in the body. So if we're really stressed out, your body's going to produce a lot of cortisol. And then what's happening here is that this progesterone is being shunted down to make cortisol. Do you see that? Okay, progesterone goes down to make cortisol. Your body doesn't have enough progesterone. Now, something I really wanted to emphasize is this is not necessarily the case for everybody. Okay, when we look at a hormone pathway, our estrogen is most dominant in the first half, but then estrogen does also come up a little bit in the second half. So sometimes we need to look at these other dysfunctions that are happening. We want to make sure that estrogen and testosterone are doing the right things. But for a lot of us, this is essentially what's happening, and this is the main piece that happens. And it's that stress ultimately that wreaks havoc during the second half of the cycle. So you might be thinking now, okay, fantastic, right? And this doesn't mean, right, like I said before, that we can now just take off 2 weeks of our life just to make sure that we're not stressed out during this part of our cycle, which, you know, we're all like, that would be fantastic, but let's be honest, it is not realistic and doable. And this is where knowing the strategies that are specifically going to reduce stress during this part of your cycle become really, really helpful to know. And when I look at my schedule and I know I'm in this luteal phase of my cycle, I'm taking specific action steps to make sure that my stress level is down, and this then supports my brain and the rest of my body in a really healthy and powerful way. As I was sharing that diagram, you're probably already starting to get some ideas as to some of the activities that you can really hone down on and reinforce in your life in the second half of that cycle to keep those cortisol levels at a healthy range, which will then support healthy progesterone production during this time. Some of the things that I specifically like to do is, number one, I will stop fasting during this time. Fasting actually increases your cortisol levels, which can make you be more stressed out. Here's the other little caveat too, though. During this time of the cycle, women tend to be more insulin resistant as well. So fasting can actually still be beneficial during this half of the cycle. The most important and best thing that you can do for yourself is to tune in to see how your body is feeling. I have noticed, and you know, my insulin and glucose pathways are actually really, really healthy. And I don't have any visible signs of insulin resistance when I do my blood work with my blood sugar levels. And so this is very important, right? And so when I fast during this time of my cycle, I feel way more irritated. I'm so much more angrier and just unhappy, and I don't feel good, and I feel like I have no energy to do anything. So I really make sure that I'm eating, 3 meals a day. Like, I'm not just like eating all the time, all day long now, because that isn't good for blood sugar levels, but I make sure that I'm having a breakfast that's high in proteins and healthy fats and veggies, and then I make sure I'm having a nutritious lunch and then a dinner as well. And just avoiding fasting for too long really helps me support healthy brain function. I will still fast, but I'll do it for like 12, 13 hours max. Or sometimes I just won't fast at all, and I'll listen to my body. And if I'm waking up and my tummy is grumbling and hungry, especially during this time of the cycle, I just don't fast, because I know that I'm going to function so much better if I give my body the nutrients that it needs. And also during this time, your body actually needs more calories. This is where all the cravings comes from, and your body needs more carbohydrates during this time. Again, a lot of us, we shame carbohydrates, and so we fast, and what ends up happening is that we end up binge eating during this time. And so one of the best things that I do to support my brain health and my body during this time is I increase my carbohydrates, but the good carbohydrates. I'll have brown rice, I'll have sweet potatoes. If I eat any sort of breads or anything like that, I really make sure they're whole grain and full of all grains that are nutritious for my brain and my body. And so increasing carbohydrate intake and just overall a little bit of the caloric intake that I have makes such a big difference in my cravings. The other piece too is that I know I always crave specific foods, specifically chips and cookies during this time. So what I'll do is I'll actually make a batch of cookies. And so I'll give myself 1 or 2 cookies as a treat in the evening, instead of binging and trying to control myself and then ending up binging. Or I'll have like, a little bowl of potato chips, just so if I'm craving it, I let myself have it. And because I'm giving myself the opportunity to have it every single day, I actually don't end up binge eating, because I'm just like, oh, like I'm letting myself have it. I'm not trying to really control and force myself to not have it at all. And so setting up these strategies in place really help. And then the rest of my cycle, I'm not really craving anything, so it's not that big of an issue. But especially during this time, I do stock up a little bit, and I make sure that I have healthy snacks and things around so that when the cravings hit, I'm not trying so hard to control it, because again, that is decision fatigue. I want to put my energy into my work, my purpose, and my goals. And so I let myself have a little bit of that junk food, and I feel so much better as a result of it. And I definitely reduced and have reduced the amount that I end up binge eating. These are by far the most powerful shifts that I make when it comes to my diet right before my cycle. The other piece that's so important during this time is to make sure that we're resting enough. I am so guilty of not getting enough sleep. But because I track my cycle, during this time of my cycle, I make sure I get not just enough sleep, I will let myself sleep an extra hour or 2, and I'll take a 20-minute nap in the middle of my day if I want to, and if my body's just like, we need some rest. Resting more during this time has been such a powerful shift. If your body is feeling more tired during this time, listen to it. When I work with the women that I work with, I always tell them that your body's always giving you signs. And because we're just so busy, we have unrealistic expectations of ourselves, we don't listen to the cues of our bodies. Your body's always telling you what it needs in every single moment. And the more that you can listen to it, the more that you will benefit and feel better as a result of it. So tune in. Does your body feel more tired, and what does it look like for you to rest? And so this means that you have to check some other things in your life. For example, this might mean you might need to skip Netflix in the evening just so you can get an extra hour of sleep. This might mean that you need to not overcommit during this time and say no to a couple of social plans so that you can give yourself the nourishment and rest that you need. So these are all the things that I'm looking at those days leading up to my menstrual cycle. And this piece about overcommitment, I really watch out for and make sure that I set realistic expectations and standards of how much I can do. It's not that if I can do it or not, because I don't use my cycle as an excuse to not get stuff done. It's all about how can I get and prioritize the most important things that I need to do, while also making sure that my brain health is supported in a really powerful way. The next shift that is also really powerful before this time is looking at the types of workouts that you do. So I love me some running, I love strength training, and it's not to say that before my period I don't do this at all, right? Because again, I don't use my cycle as an excuse to not do stuff, but I just tune into how I'm feeling that day. So if I have a strength training workout scheduled, I might not even use any weights. I might just do body weight stuff. I might do it slower. And I might do and combine this with more yoga and more gentle workouts. I might shorten my strength training workout and go on a walk instead. And so switching over to more gentle workouts also reduces cortisol, because when you work out, your body, and depending on how strenuous of an exercise you do, your body's releasing your stress hormone, which is cortisol. Now, the exercise, when we do it and we release that cortisol, it is good cortisol, right? But it's cortisol at the end of the day. And so in order to kind of keep these levels down, moving towards more gentle workouts can be more helpful. I'll go swimming during this time. I'll do more yoga classes during this time. I'll go on more walks during this time. And again, tune into your bodies. Sometimes I'll get to this part of my cycle and I'm just like, oh, I have lots of energy. So I will hit it hard at a strength training workout and I'm feeling fantastic. And I'm still feeling good the next couple of days. So you really want to make sure to tune into your body. Switch the workouts up, make the weights be a little bit easier and see if that changes things up. And if you're still feeling like you're feeling exhausted after a workout, then go towards the more gentle stuff. Sometimes what I'll do, depending on how I'm feeling, is I'll make that whole week be like a yoga week. So all I'm doing is yoga workouts during that time. And then the rest of my cycle, I'll hit it hard at the gym and do those strenuous exercises and workouts. So again, your cycle doesn't have to hold you back from living the life you want to live, but understanding what's happening to your body and listening to the cues of your body can help you to support yourself in a more powerful way. Something else I also do during this time is I just reframe that whole week as a self-care week. So it's a week where I'm just pouring into myself, nourishing myself. I don't try to plan too many things to do and go out, and I spend more time at home. I love me some good movie nights, watching some reality TV. I just started watching The Vanderpumps. I don't know where the show has been my whole life. I literally started in their first season, which was like 2009, 2008, and I'm in love. Fun fact, I never used to watch reality shows before because I would always be like, oh, whatever I watch has to be informational, educational. But lately, I've just been so stimulated, and having some reality TV in my life just brings me so much joy. Let me know if you have some reality TV suggestions, because I'm just loving reality TV at the end of a night. It's been fantastic. So I'll essentially make that be my whole self-care week. I'll do more self-care masks and just do things that just nourish me and pour into me. It's been such a beautiful reframe to have. And when I kind of see it as self-care week, again, I reset those expectations that I have for myself as to what I can do during this time. And during this time, I might not necessarily do any sort of like growth activities, and I might just be sticking to the things that I'm already doing and try to just maintain and stay at the level that I'm at. I feel like for so many of us, right, we just feel like we're in this place that we just constantly need to grow and get better and do more, and it's just like, chill the F out. You don't always need to grow. Sometimes you need to learn to master where you're at right now. For a lot of us, before we've even mastered the current place that we're at, we're looking to grow and we're already thinking about the next thing. And this takes away from our ability to master where we're at in the first place. And I think one of the best things that we really can do is sometimes learn to just be and just get good at where we're at right now. And this time of your cycle is a great place to just be and just see where you're at right now. So that's something else that I do as well during this time, reframing it to self-care week. And then the last piece, so this isn't more so a specific strategy to support the body necessarily. It's more of a mindset tip that I want to give to you, which has made a powerful shift in my mindset and my brain health before my cycle starts, is that I don't believe anything my mind says. I don't believe anything my mind says. This has been such a powerful shift for me, because right before my cycle, I will always have these thoughts of just like, oh, I'm so alone. No one loves me. I'm lonely. Like, my relationship sucks. Let me sort of fight with my boyfriend and say something. Or like, wow, none of my friends are reaching out to me. And I really have to tune in during this time. And I do all the mindset work, reflect on these thoughts, look at where they're coming from. But at the end of the day, I just choose to not believe anything my mind says during this time. I know that things are tainted because there's a shift in hormones and the stress and all of that stuff. And so just by not believing in my mind and waiting to take action on any of these thoughts until after my cycle has come and my period has come makes such a big difference. I used to be notorious, and sometimes I still do. I'm not perfect at this. I still have to catch myself. But I was notorious of like sending out an angry text to my boyfriend during this time, right? Or just starting a fight. And like half of it was always unnecessary. Okay, not all of it, because some of it was necessary. But most of it was just so unnecessary. Or starting an argument with a friend or a family member. And it's because I would just act from those thoughts and from that place without taking a step back to ask myself if this is really true. And now I've started to really practice the art of just sleeping on these thoughts, waking up and seeing, do I still feel the same way? And do I still feel the need to share these things? And if I still do, then I will. And I'll share it definitely in a much better and healthier way instead of in that moment, sending that angry text or doing that stuff that can be really destructive during this time. So this is one of the most powerful things that you can do as well. Don't believe your mind. And also tune into, during this time, what are some of the thoughts that come up? So for example, for me, that thought that always comes up is that, oh, you're so alone. Oh, no one loves you. So what I have is I literally have written down a list of people on my phone that I know love me and are there for me. And when those thoughts come up, I go to that list. I also have recorded like voice notes on my phone for when I experience these types of challenging thoughts and emotions. And when this voice comes up in my mind, I listen to those voice notes. And I remind myself that, hang on, everything's okay. And when all else fails, I honestly just turn to gratitude. Gratitude is just a powerful practice. And I'll literally just be like, oh my God, I'm grateful for this chair. I'm grateful for my laptop. I'm grateful for my room. I'm grateful for where I'm just at in life right now. And just to switch towards gratitude during this time makes such a powerful difference. So tune in and look at what are the thoughts that specifically show up and what are the strategies that you can build around them to remind yourself that this is just a phase of these thoughts that you're experiencing. Keep in mind too that there's a wide range of how severe our mood can fluctuate during this time. And it's important that you talk to a healthcare practitioner and that you get the proper assessments and supports done. If you want support in really learning how to dial down and support your brain health during this time of your cycle, I would encourage you to use the link below to book a free brain health assessment with me, and we can talk about what customized support for you and your brain health looks like, because that is so important, right? Although I'm sharing these strategies, it's so important to look at your body, assess where it's at, and then from there, get that appropriate customized support. So these are the strategies that I wanted to share with you. I hope that you've gotten a really good understanding of at least what's happening at that time of the cycle and why these strategies work so well. And the last thing I'm going to emphasize is that this doesn't have to be hard. I always emphasize that great brain health can be simple, fun, and practical. Simple, fun, practical, and easy, because it can be. And I like to simplify everything that I do in my life and for my patients' life, because again, great health doesn't have to be so hard. It's all about getting back down to the basics. So I hope these help. And keep in mind that it takes about 3 to 4 cycles to really get used to these changes. It takes about 3 to 4 cycles to really start seeing these differences, because that's just how long it takes to really see that difference in our hormonal health. So take these tips, use them, and I wish you all the best.